You ever stop at a place that feels wrong the moment you walk in? Not dangerous, just wrong. Like the air's heavier than it should be, like the walls are listening, like the lights know your name. That's what the Meridian Inn is. A quiet hotel off a road that doesn't show up on maps. No staff. No guests. Just one help wanted sign that's been hanging there for decades, waiting for someone desperate enough to walk inside. I was that someone. I thought I was taking a job. Turns out, I was accepting an invitation. And once you punch in here, you don't clock out. Ever. This isn't just a story, it's a warning. Because if you ever find yourself driving down an empty highway at night, and you see a flickering neon sign that says vacancy, keep driving. Or check in, and learn why the monsters don't hide under your bed anymore. They run the front desk. My name's Derek Cole, 32 years old, born and raised in Jackson, Mississippi. If you'd told me a year ago I'd end up working night shifts at a half-dead roadside hotel called the Meridian Inn, I would have laughed, or maybe just stared at you the same way I stared at my eviction notice last spring, tired, hollow, past the point of being surprised. I didn't plan for my life to look like this. But that's how most horror starts, right? With somebody thinking they still have time to get it right. Mom passed first, heart attack in her sleep. Then my job disappeared when the car wash shut down. My little sister, Nia, was still in high school. She started looking at me like I was supposed to be our father now. I could barely keep the lights on. The landlord gave me 7 days before we'd be sleeping in the same beat-up sedan that barely made it to the corner store. So when I saw that crooked sign off Highway 49 that read help wanted, night front desk, I pulled over without thinking. The place sat just outside of town, surrounded by pine trees and a fog that never lifted. The Meridian Inn looked like it had been built sometime in the 1950s and forgotten ever since. The neon sign flickered red and white, half the letters burned out. From the road it just said, "The Mirror Inn." It felt more like a warning than a name. I parked, walked up to the front door, and the first thing that hit me was the smell, old carpet and lemon cleaner fighting to hide something worse. The air felt thick, like the building was holding its breath. Somewhere in the lobby, a vending machine hummed louder than it should have. A small brass bell sat on the front counter, the kind you see in old movies. I tapped it once. A door creaked open behind the desk. That's when I met Mr. Harlan. He looked maybe 60, skin pale and tight like old paper, white hair slicked back, eyes too bright to feel normal. He didn't smile. He studied me like he was trying to decide if I was real or just another shadow in the room. "You're here for the night position," he said. His voice was low but sharp. "Good. Nobody else ever lasts." That should have been my first red flag. But when you're broke, your gut starts lying to you. He didn't ask for a resume, didn't even ask about my past jobs. Just handed me a clipboard and said, "Initial here, here, and here. You'll get your check every Friday in cash. Room 3B's yours if you need to stay. Never leave before dawn." I signed without reading. That was my second mistake. He nodded once, slid a brass key toward me, and disappeared through the same door he came from. The silence that followed felt alive. I could hear the clock ticking behind me, each second heavier than the last. I walked down the hall, the carpet squishing under my boots. The walls were covered in old wallpaper, the kind with faded flowers that looked like bruises in the dim light. Room 3B smelled like dust and bleach. The bedspread had cigarette burns, and the lampshade was tilted, but I didn't care. It was shelter. I dropped my bag, sat on the edge of the bed, and told myself this was just another job. The kind that keeps you invisible. I should have run right then. But I didn't. Because people like me don't run. We settle. We tell ourselves it's just for a while, and we wait for a while to turn into forever. That night, I started my first shift. The lobby lights buzzed weakly, throwing sick yellow shadows across the floor. I kept glancing at the clock, it was only 10 p.m. The hotel was empty except for the hum of the vending machine and a faint static from a TV somewhere behind the wall. Every sound felt wrong, like the place itself was whispering under its breath. Around midnight, I started counting ceiling tiles just to stay awake. That's when I heard it again. Footsteps. Slow, uneven. Coming from upstairs. I checked the ledger. No one was checked in above. Not a single room. The steps dragged past directly over my head, then stopped. The silence after was so deep I could hear my heartbeat. Then came 3 knocks. Soft. From the ceiling. I stared up, frozen. A drop of something, dark, thick, fell and hit the counter beside my hand. When I looked up again, the sound was gone. The ceiling looked dry. I told myself it was a leak, but the air didn't smell like water. It smelled like iron. By 2 o'clock, the clock's ticking had grown louder than my thoughts. I found the hotel's old rule sheet again, running my thumb along the edge. The paper felt almost warm. I don't know why I started whispering the words out loud, but I did, like saying them might make me believe they were just a prank. That's when I heard an engine outside. Headlights cut through the fog. A black SUV rolled in slow, like it didn't belong to this world. The engine idled but never shut off. A tall man stepped out, long brown coat, wide shoulders, skin pale as wax. He walked straight to the counter, slid $100 bill across it, and said one word. Room. I glanced at the clock. 2:41 a.m. Sorry, sir, I said, trying to sound firm. No check-ins after 2:37. He didn't blink. He just repeated it slower. Room. Something in his voice felt heavy, like it wasn't sound at all but pressure, pushing against the air in my lungs. I tried to step back, but my feet wouldn't move. Behind him, the SUV door opened on its own. I swear I saw a shape sitting inside. It wasn't a person. It was smaller, bent forward, skin gray and thin like paper stretched over bone. It moved wrong, jerky, like a shadow trying to crawl out of a body. I forced myself to speak. Hotel policy. Can't check you in. The man tilted his head just a little. Then he smiled. Not a real smile, his mouth stretched too far, the skin around it tight and cracking. He turned and walked back to the SUV. The engine cut off, but the headlights didn't fade. They blinked. Once. Twice. Like eyes closing. The next thing I remember, I was sitting behind the desk with my hands shaking and the rule sheet open in front of me. I stared at the first line until it blurred. Never check in a guest after 2:37 a.m. When dawn came, I didn't move. The sunlight spilling through the blinds looked fake, like someone had painted it on the glass. That morning, Mr. Harlan came out from the back room, same calm expression. Good shift, he asked. I wanted to tell him about the man. About the SUV. But something in his eyes stopped me. It wasn't warning, it was expectation. Like he already knew. He set a brown envelope on the counter. First pay, he said. You did fine. Just keep following the rules. I nodded. My mouth felt dry. The envelope was warm. Inside, crisp bills, too crisp. I didn't remember giving him my information, but somehow he knew everything. I went back to room 3B and tried to sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard that voice again. Room. By noon, I gave up on resting. I went outside. The air felt wrong again, quiet but not peaceful. The fog hadn't lifted. The road looked longer than I remembered, stretching too far into the trees. I took one step toward my car, but something in my chest pulled tight, like invisible hands gripping my ribs. I turned around before I even knew I was doing it. That night, when the clock hit 2:37, I didn't move an inch. I know what you're thinking, why not quit? Why not leave? Let me ask you something, if your back was against the wall, if your family depended on you, how far would you go to keep the lights on? That's why you should subscribe. Not because of me, but because you already know what it's like to choose survival over peace. Some jobs take your time. Others take your soul. If you think you're stronger than I was, fine. Don't subscribe. But when something dark stares through your window at 2:37 and whispers your name, remember, you were warned. The next night, I tried to convince myself it had all been a dream. Maybe the exhaustion was getting to me. Maybe I just imagined that pale man and his wrong-shaped passenger. I brewed coffee, wiped the counter, and told myself I'd laugh about this someday. The lies we tell ourselves just to breathe. By 3 a.m., I was halfway through a stale sandwich when the front door creaked open. No car outside. No sound of tires on gravel. Just that door swinging slow and heavy. She drifted in. Her dress was white once, but now it looked drowned, wet at the edges, dragging puddles of water behind her. Long, black hair clung to her face. The air turned cold enough that I could see my breath. She didn't walk to the counter, she floated, like her feet had forgotten gravity. When she spoke, her voice didn't come from her mouth. It came from the walls. 3 towels, please. My body froze. I didn't need to check the list. I already knew rule number 5. When the woman in white asks for extra towels, give her 3 and never make eye contact. My hands shook so hard I could barely grab the stack. I counted out 3 towels, eyes locked on the counter. I slid them across the surface. The edge of one brushed her hand. It was cold, like metal left outside in winter. Thank you, she whispered. The words crawled into my ears, softer than air. She turned away, water dripping onto the tile. I couldn't stop myself, I looked up. Just a glance. Her face wasn't there. Where her eyes should have been was just black water, rippling like a reflection. The temperature dropped even more. Every light in the lobby flickered once, twice, then steadied. When she reached the hallway, she disappeared, gone between blinks. All that remained were the wet footprints. They stopped halfway across the lobby. No door opened. No sound. Just stillness. I sank to the floor and pressed my palms against my face. I wanted to cry, but no tears came. The fear was too dry. When I finally lifted my head, something new waited on the counter, a note. Folded clean, white paper, like it had been placed there gently. The handwriting was neat, curved, careful. Rule number 7, don't let them know you're new. I stared at it until my hands went numb. Who wrote it? Was someone watching? Behind me, the old clock ticked to 2:37 a.m. and stopped. Every night since, it's done the same. I've worked rough jobs before. I've cleaned blood off car seats at a junkyard. I've watched people overdose behind gas stations. Nothing ever stuck with me like this. Because here, at this place, it isn't the monsters that scare me anymore. It's the way I'm starting to feel like I belong. You think horror stories are about death? They're not. They're about the slow dying you don't notice until it's already done. And if you're listening to this thinking you'd do better, be smarter, be stronger, go ahead. Don't subscribe. Pretend you're safe. But when you find a note under your pillow that says rule number 1, never stop watching, tell yourself it's a coincidence. Then come back and comment why you thought it was. That night, I wasn't alone behind the counter. Around midnight, a woman stepped out of the staff room I thought was locked. She was tall, with skin the color of polished wood and braids tied neatly behind her head. Her name tag read Vanessa, though it looked worn, the letters almost rubbed away. You the new night clerk? She asked, lighting a cigarette even though the air smelled like lemon cleaner and ghosts. Guess so, I said. She smiled, but not the kind that comforted you. The kind that said she already knew how the story ended. You still got both eyes, so that's good. Means you've been following the rules. I didn't know what to say. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, so I shoved them into my pockets. Vanessa leaned against the counter. You've seen something by now. Everyone does before the 3rd night. I nodded slowly. A man tried to check in after 2:37. And something else. Upstairs. Her face changed. The cigarette froze between her fingers. You told him no? Yeah. Then you're still breathing. That's something. She exhaled smoke toward the ceiling. This place eats those who break the list. Don't ask me how I know. I watched her for a while. Her eyes were tired but sharp. She had the look of someone who'd been waiting too long for something that never came. How long you been here? I asked. She laughed, but it didn't sound human. More like wind through broken glass. Long enough to forget what year it is. You start losing track of time when the clock keeps lying. What do you mean? She pointed to the lobby clock. It ever stop at 2:37? I hesitated. Yeah. Last night. She nodded. Then it's already started. The inn knows your name now. Her words sat heavy in my chest. What happens if I quit? Vanessa smiled again, but this time her lips trembled. You don't quit, baby. You just stop being part of the living staff. Sometimes, I hear them whisper about us, the ones who stayed too long. She stubbed her cigarette out on the desk. The market left was black and wet, like ink that wouldn't dry. You ever see the man in the hat? I shook my head. You will. When you do, don't speak. Don't move. Don't breathe. Just pretend you a shadow. Her voice shook on the last word. She looked over my shoulder like she saw something moving that I couldn't. Then she whispered, if the phone rings after 2:36, let it ring. Don't you dare answer it. She pushed away from the counter and started toward the staff door. Before she vanished, she turned back. You want to know what this place really is? It ain't a hotel. It's a mouth. And we're the teeth. The door closed behind her, slow and soft. That was the last time I saw her alive. The next morning, when Harlan came in, I asked about her. Vanessa, he said, squinting like the name was new to him. We haven't had a Vanessa here in years. He turned the register key, and I saw something inside the drawer, a rusted metal tag engraved V. Smith, room 6. My stomach dropped. You know that feeling when you realize a place remembers you better than you remember yourself? That's what the Meridian Inn does. It watches, it waits, and when it smiles, you don't know if it's through a person or through the walls. Morning came like it was ashamed to show its face. I hadn't slept. Every shadow in the room looked too solid, too alive. I packed what little I had, one duffel, a phone that couldn't find a signal, and the envelope of money Harlan had given me, and walked out. The parking lot was soaked in fog. The air smelled of old rain and something faintly sweet, like burnt sugar. I could barely see the trees lining the highway, but I told myself once I got in my car, I'd drive until the sun felt real again. Except when I started the engine and backed up, the headlights didn't hit the road. They hit trees. Not a line of them, not a small patch, just trees. Thick, endless, pressed together like a wall that had always been there. The highway was gone. I stepped out, gravel crunching under my shoes. The air around me was heavy, the kind that sticks to your skin. I walked closer to the tree line. The fog between the trunks moved like it was breathing. I could swear I heard voices, low, slow, like someone whispering into water. I picked up a rock and threw it as hard as I could. It vanished into the mist without a sound. Not even a thud. When I turned around, the hotel looked smaller. The neon sign flickered weakly, the Meridian Inn. From the outside, it was just a dying building. But every window looked like an open eye. I ran back inside. The lobby clock read 2:37 a.m. again. The second hand twitched but never moved. I unplugged it, tore the batteries out, even smashed it against the floor. The sound it made wasn't glass breaking, it was a pulse. A single, soft heartbeat. I backed away, shaking. My foot hit something, a small blue mug. Steam curled up from it, faint but steady. The name scratched into the side read Samson. I hadn't made coffee. I didn't touch it. Mr. Harlan appeared from the staff room like nothing was wrong. Rough morning, he asked, voice calm as ever. The road's gone, I said. It's just trees. What's happening here? He smiled, small and empty. You'll get used to it. No. I'm done. I quit. He nodded like he'd heard that before. You can try. But this place doesn't let go easy. He handed me another envelope, thicker than the first. Your pay's doubled. Consider it incentive to stay. I wanted to throw it at him, but my hand wouldn't move. My fingers trembled, but something deep inside me wanted to keep that envelope. Needed to. Harlan turned to leave. Don't forget the coffee before 3. That's when it hit me, the rule about the coffee pot wasn't about staying awake. It was about feeding something. The pot was always empty by morning. The blue mug never cooled. And the name scratched on it. I realized I'd seen it before, Samson Cole. My father's name. I stumbled back, the walls pressing closer. Harlan's voice echoed from somewhere deep in the hallway. Every family leaves something behind. Yours just left a shift that never ends. I dropped the envelope and ran for the door. It didn't open. My reflection stared back from the glass, but it wasn't moving like me. Its mouth was whispering words I couldn't hear. Behind me, the lobby phone rang. 1 ring. 2. 3. The label above the blinking light read room 6. I didn't answer. The ringing stopped. For a moment, I thought it was over. Then another line lit up, room 3B. My room. When I picked it up, all I heard was breathing. Then my own voice said, see you tonight. The line went dead. That was the moment I stopped pretending this was a job. The Meridian Inn wasn't hiring. It was collecting. And I was next on the list. If you've ever chased a second chance so hard that you stopped asking what it costs, you already know what I felt right then. That's why you should subscribe, because there are doors in this world you don't want to open alone. If you won't, fine. Tell me in the comments why you'd rather stay blind. Just remember, the inn's always hiring. And it already has your name. The days stopped meaning anything after that morning. I slept in pieces, maybe 2 hours at a time, and every time I closed my eyes, I dreamed of trees whispering my name. When I came back to the lobby for my next shift, everything looked the same, but it felt different. The air was heavier, like the hotel was waiting for me to admit something. The coffee pot was already half full, even though I hadn't touched it. The blue mug, the one with Samson scratched on the side, sat beside it, steam curling up in thin, steady ribbons. I stood there for a long time just staring at it. Then I said it out loud. You're not real. But the steam didn't stop. When the clock hit 2, I poured myself a cup anyway. It tasted burnt and sweet at the same time, like something trying to taste human. I set the mug down and looked at the register log. There were no new guests listed, but the pages were filled with names written in someone else's handwriting. Each line ended with the same note, checked out, no departure. I don't know how long I stood there reading, but when I blinked, the handwriting changed. My name was at the bottom. Derek Cole, room 3B. Checked out, no departure. I tore the page out, but the paper stayed blank in my hands. The writing had vanished. A noise came from the hallway then, soft, rhythmic, like something tapping its fingers against the wall. I stepped out from behind the counter and followed the sound. The hallway lights flickered once, twice, then went steady. The tapping stopped. There was a door I hadn't noticed before, wedged between 2 guest rooms, no number, just a brass knob cold as ice. I pressed my ear to it. Nothing. When I turned back toward the lobby, the door was gone. That was the first time I felt it for real, like the hotel was breathing. When I returned to the desk, the coffee pot was empty. Completely drained. The blue mug was still steaming. Something had drunk it while I was gone. I stood there until the clock's minute hand shivered over 2:37 a.m. That same number again. I tried to unplug the clock, but the cord snapped in my hand like old thread. The ticking didn't stop. It was inside the walls now, echoing like a heartbeat. Harlan appeared a few minutes later, out of nowhere, holding a ledger under his arm. His white hair was slicked back like always, his face calm and unreadable. "You filled the pot," he said. "Yeah," I said slowly. "Someone emptied it." He nodded like that made sense. "Some guests don't like to be seen drinking." Then he smiled. "Keep the pot full. That's one of the good rules." He walked away before I could ask what that meant. When I looked down, the note he'd left me before, "Don't let them know you're new," was gone. In its place was another folded paper. "Keep serving. They'll let you stay." I wanted to tear it up, burn it, scream, anything. But I didn't. Because deep down, I already knew what it meant. If I stopped serving, I'd be next on the list. If you think this couldn't happen to you, you're exactly who it's waiting for. The Meridian Inn doesn't pick people who believe, it picks people who don't. That's why you should subscribe now. Because disbelief won't save you when something starts using your name in a place you've never been. If you're too proud, fine. Tell me in the comments how it feels to laugh at warnings. We'll both find out if laughter echoes in the dark. The next night started the same way, quiet, thick air, and that coffee pot already half full before I touched it. The mug waited beside it like it was expecting me. I didn't drink any this time. I sat behind the counter watching the monitors. Most showed the same empty hallways, the same flickering lights, but one screen, the one for room 6, kept glitching, flashing static and slow, heavy pulses. Every time it cleared, I thought I saw something tall standing by the bed. By midnight, I'd talked myself into thinking it was just the camera. That's when the staff door creaked open. Vanessa stepped out again. Same braids, same calm voice. But something was different. She looked thinner, her skin pale like the light couldn't touch it. "You still here?" she asked, almost smiling. "You too," I said. "Harlan said you." She cut me off. "Don't listen to him. He lies the way this place breathes." Her voice sounded flat, like it came from a radio just out of range. "I looked for you," I said. "You weren't on the staff list anymore." Vanessa's eyes softened. "That's because I checked out." She lit another cigarette, but when she inhaled, no smoke came out. She looked at the coffee pot. "You still feeding it?" I didn't answer. "Good," she said. "That's the only thing keeping it calm." "What is it?" I asked. "The thing that drinks," she whispered. "Every hotel needs guests. This one just doesn't wait for reservations." Her laugh was short and empty. "Why me?" I said. "Why pick me?" "You answered the bell." She nodded toward the counter. "That's all it takes. You ring, it rings back." Her cigarette fell to the floor, but she didn't notice. "You're trying to leave, aren't you?" "Yeah," I said. "The road's gone." "Of course it's gone," she said quietly. "The inn only shows roads to people who still have somewhere else to go." Her eyes flicked toward the security monitor for room 6. The static froze on one frame, something long and thin, a shadow wearing a wide-brimmed hat, head tilted forward like it was listening. Vanessa reached out and turned off the screen. "When you see him, don't talk. Don't breathe. Pretend you're wallpaper." "Who is he?" I asked. She didn't look at me. "He's the one that signs the checks." Then she was gone again, just gone, like she had stepped into air. The smell of smoke lingered long after. I sat there alone, staring at the monitor, waiting for it to flicker back on. When it did, the hat was gone. But a single message had appeared across the screen, written in static white letters. "We're hiring." Every light in the lobby went out at once. The coffee pot hissed and boiled over, spilling black liquid across the counter. I backed away. It smelled sweet, almost like blood. Then, just as sudden, everything went still. The lights flickered back on. The mess was gone. The pot was full again. I wanted to leave more than I'd ever wanted anything. but the front door was locked tight, key broken in the knob. When I turned around, the clock read 2:37 a.m. The heartbeat started again, slow, steady, patient. It started again the following night, same stillness, same heavy air. I thought about Vanessa's warning all evening. When you see him, don't breathe. The words kept circling in my head like a song you can't forget. By 2:30, the hotel felt colder. The vending machine's hum dipped lower, almost like it was growling. I refilled the coffee pot, kept the lights on, and told myself I'd survive until dawn. Then the phone rang. The sound hit like a punch, shrill, sharp, echoing off every wall. I looked down. The light on the panel was glowing red. Room 6. My whole body went cold. I stared at it, hand hovering inches away. Do not answer. Vanessa's words. The rule list. All of it. But the ringing wouldn't stop. It just kept going, 10 seconds, 20, 30, each ring louder than the one before. I pressed my palms to my ears, but I could still hear it inside my head, like it was calling from somewhere deeper than the phone line. Please stop, I whispered. It didn't. Then the security monitor flickered. Static crawled across the screen. When it cleared, I saw it, room 6. The door was open just a crack, and something was standing beside the bed. It wasn't a man. It was tall, its shoulders wrong, its arms too long, hands hanging below its knees. Its skin looked gray and stretched, like paper soaked in oil. The head turned toward the camera. And then, slowly, it raised its hand and waved. The phone went silent. I froze. My heartbeat was loud enough to fill the whole lobby. The figure stepped closer to the camera. Its head tilted sideways, like it was trying to listen through the lens. Then everything went black. When the monitor came back, the screen was empty. The door to room 6 was shut. I couldn't move. My body was locked in place. That's when I smelled it, the burnt sweetness again, same as the coffee. I turned my head, and the blue mug was full. Steam rising. I hadn't poured it. I wanted to scream, but my voice wouldn't come. I picked up the mug and threw it at the wall. It didn't shatter. It didn't even hit the floor. It just stopped midair and settled gently back on the counter, not a drop spilled. The phone rang again. Same line. Room 6. I didn't answer. The air in the lobby felt thicker, heavier, like the walls were closing in. I took one step backward and hit the front door. I could feel something breathing on the other side of it, slow and steady, like it was matching my heartbeat. When I looked up, I saw my reflection in the glass. But it wasn't moving the way I was. My reflection was smiling. I turned away. The phone finally stopped. Harlan came in a few minutes later, carrying a ledger. Everything quiet tonight? He asked. I wanted to tell him everything, the phone, the figure, the mug, but the words died in my throat. I just nodded. He smiled, the same small, empty smile as always. Good. Keep it that way. He walked to the staff door, stopped halfway, and said, You didn't answer, did you? I shook my head. Good, he said softly. That one still remembers my voice. He disappeared into the hallway, and the door clicked shut. I sat there for the rest of the night, eyes locked on the monitor. Room 6 stayed dark. But sometimes, when the screen flickered, I saw movement in the reflection of the lens, someone watching from behind the camera. I don't know if it was me. You think fear is just a feeling. It's not. It's a place. And if you stay long enough, it learns your name. Subscribe before it learns yours. Or don't. Tell me in the comments what your voice sounds like when something calls it back. The Inn always loves new names to whisper. I didn't sleep that morning. I sat in the lobby until the sun crawled weakly through the blinds. It didn't look right, too pale, too thin. Like it was afraid to touch this place. When I finally worked up the nerve, I checked the staff room door. Vanessa's lighter was on the table, still warm, a half-burned cigarette in the ashtray. But her name tag was gone. I walked to the front desk and opened the drawer where the spare keys were kept. That's when I saw it, a small, rusted tag at the bottom, half buried under old papers. V. Smith, Room 6. My stomach dropped. I ran back to the monitor. Room SIX's camera showed only static. The harder I stared, the more it looked like shapes were forming behind the noise, long arms, something leaning too close to the screen. I shut it off. When Mr. Harlan came in later that morning, he looked the same as always, calm and polite. I asked him where Vanessa was. He frowned like the name confused him. Who? Vanessa. The other night clerk. He tilted his head, eyes sharp and almost amused. We haven't had a Vanessa here in years. That's not true. She was here last night. He didn't respond. He just opened the register and began counting bills. I waited, shaking, until he finally looked up. You've been working alone, Derek. You should rest more. This place plays tricks when you're tired. I wanted to scream, to grab him and make him admit it. But the way he said my name, like it belonged to him, made me stop. He closed the drawer and slid it toward me. Your pay. When I looked inside, my fingers went numb. Beneath the cash was a folded note. Some ghosts clock out slower than others. I looked up. Harlan was gone. The air in the lobby felt thick and heavy, like someone invisible was standing right behind me. I turned, fast, but nothing was there. Just my reflection in the glass, mouth half open, eyes wide. The clock read 2:37 a.m. again. Always that number. Always that time. The day bled into night, and the inn began to hum again, the low, electric heartbeat I could feel through the floor. I thought about leaving, but the trees outside still pressed close, a green wall around the world. I went to my room to pack, even though I knew it was useless. The duffel lay open on the bed. The first thing I saw was Vanessa's name tag sitting on top of my clothes. I hadn't put it there. The metal was cold against my palm. As I stared at it, the letters began to fade, one by one, until the tag was blank. That's when the phone on the nightstand rang. One ring. Two. I didn't answer. The third ring never came. Instead, I heard a voice behind me, soft, familiar, broken. Don't stay too long. I spun around, but no one was there. Just the mirror, and in it, a shadow wearing her face. Vanessa's reflection smiled weakly, like she was already half somewhere else. They don't let you quit, she said. They just move you to the next shift. Then the glass fogged over from the inside, and she was gone. I fell to my knees. I didn't cry, didn't scream. I just sat there, shaking, staring at my own reflection. My eyes looked darker. I swear the pupils were too big. The inn was already changing me. You don't work at a place like this, you become part of it. The morning after Vanessa's reflection vanished, I tried again to leave. I packed everything, walked to the front door, and stepped outside. The fog was thicker than before, swallowing the whole parking lot. I couldn't see the sign, couldn't even see my own car until I was almost touching it. The key turned, the engine coughed, and for a moment I thought I'd won. I put the car in gear, rolled forward maybe 10 feet, and stopped. The road wasn't there anymore. It was just dirt and trees, stretching forever in every direction. The highway, the exit signs, even the streetlights, gone. I got out of the car, the gravel crunching under my shoes. My breath hung in the air, even though it wasn't cold. The trees weren't still, they swayed like something huge was moving behind them. I took one step closer and heard whispering, soft and dry, like voices coming from inside the bark. I should have run. Instead, I whispered back, please. I just want to go home. The whispering stopped. Then, from somewhere deep in the woods, something laughed, low, slow, like the sound of air leaking through teeth. I stumbled back toward the hotel. The building looked smaller now, darker. The neon sign sputtered, the Meridian Inn, the last flicker of light before the world went black. When I stepped inside, the lobby was empty. The air tasted like dust and static. I looked at the clock. 2:37 a.m. frozen again. The phone on the counter rang once. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened the register drawer, hoping to find another note, another clue, anything. Inside was a single brass key. The tag read Room 6. I didn't touch it. I knew better by now. But I couldn't look away either. The tag was warm, like it had just been held. Then, behind me, a voice said, "You can leave when you understand why you came." I turned around. No one was there. The sound of footsteps echoed down the hallway, slow, deliberate. They stopped outside Room 6. The door creaked open by itself. I knew if I went toward it, I'd never come back. But something in me, the same broken part that made me stop here in the first place, needed to know. I took one step forward. Then another. The hallway stretched longer than it should have, the wallpaper peeling like old skin. Every light buzzed and flickered overhead. When I reached the door, I stopped. The number 6 looked carved, not printed. I touched it. The wood pulsed beneath my fingers. A sound came from inside, whispering, but not words. It was like someone humming through water. I raised my hand to the handle, then froze. From behind me, Harlan's voice, "Told you not to open that room." I turned. He was standing at the end of the hall, face calm, eyes too bright. "What's in there?" I asked. He didn't answer. He just looked at me the way you look at something that doesn't know it's already gone. "Why can't I leave?" I said. He smiled faintly. "Because you haven't finished the shift." I looked down. The key to Room 6 was gone from my hand, but the tag was still warm against my palm. I backed away, slow, trying to keep my eyes on him. But the hallway started breathing again, walls rising and falling like lungs. Harlan didn't move. He just watched me. When I finally reached the lobby, the front door was gone. In its place stood a wall of mirrors, each one reflecting a different version of me, some tired, some older, one smiling. I pressed my hand to the glass. It felt like skin. Then the lights went out. When they came back, the mirrors were gone. The door was back. The clock read 2:38. For the first time, the minute hand had moved. And that terrified me more than anything else. Because if time was moving again, it meant the inn was alive. And it had decided to keep me. You don't escape things like this by running, you escape by becoming part of the story. That's why you should subscribe, so you know what's waiting when it's your turn to check in. Or don't. Pretend the road behind you still exists. Leave a comment from wherever you are, and I'll tell the inn to keep the lights on for you. The next morning, the air inside the Meridian Inn felt heavier, like breathing through wet cloth. The sunlight didn't reach past the front windows anymore. It stopped right at the glass, as if the light itself refused to step inside. I sat behind the desk staring at the clock. It was still frozen at 2:37 a.m. The second hand twitched now and then, but it never moved forward. I'd smashed it the night before, crushed it into pieces, even threw it against the wall. Yet somehow, every time I came back, it was whole again, ticking, waiting. That morning, I unplugged it once more, then pulled the plug out of the wall. The ticking didn't stop. It was in the air, faint but constant, like the sound of a heartbeat buried inside the walls. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and listened. The sound wasn't just one clock anymore. It was dozens, maybe hundreds, all ticking in different rhythms, layered one on top of another until it became a pulse. When I opened my eyes, the lobby lights were dimmer. The wallpaper had shifted shades, from pale gold to a color that looked like bruised flesh. The hotel was changing again. I walked outside hoping to see anything familiar, cars, road signs, even birds. But the fog didn't move, and the trees still circled the building like a cage. The air smelled thick, electric, almost metallic. Somewhere deep within the forest, I heard a low hum, steady and deep, like a generator buried underground. When I turned back, the inn looked different. Taller. I counted the windows, 6 last night, 7 this morning. 1 more than before. That was when I realized the hotel was growing. I stepped back, heart racing, and nearly tripped over something in the dirt. A small brass key lay half buried there, glinting in the dim light. I bent down and picked it up. The tag was blank. I went back inside, clutching it tight. The front desk drawer where the rule sheet had been was open again, but now a new paper was taped there. The handwriting was sharp, neat, familiar. The clock keeps the door closed. If it stops, they'll come through. I didn't know who wrote it. Maybe Vanessa. Maybe Harlan. Maybe whoever came before me. For the first time, I didn't feel alone in the building. Not in a comforting way, more like being watched by something old and patient. The phone on the counter clicked softly, not ringing, just a small static pop. I picked up the receiver. No dial tone. Just faint breathing. Then, a whisper, tick, tick, tick. I dropped it. The sound stopped. I looked at the clock again. The second hand was moving. Slowly. Carefully. Backward. The air went cold. I heard footsteps upstairs again, the same slow dragging steps from my first night. But this time, they didn't stop. They moved from room to room, closer each second, until the sound was right above me. The ceiling creaked. Dust fell like ash. Then silence. I backed up toward the front door, one hand on the handle. The glass reflected the lobby behind me, and something else. A tall shadow stood at the top of the stairs. Its outline rippled like smoke. A hat tilted forward, hiding its face. The man in the hat. I blinked, and he was gone. The clock on the wall stopped ticking. The air inside the lobby went still. For a moment, everything felt weightless, like the world was holding its breath. Then the phone rang. Once. I didn't answer. When the ringing stopped, the clock started again. This time, it was moving forward. I sat down behind the desk, shaking, and stared at it until sunrise. I knew what the note meant now. The clock didn't just tell time, it contained it. If it ever stopped completely, the door between this place and whatever waits outside would open. You think you understand what time means? You don't. Not until you've seen it bleed. By the next night, I'd made up my mind to quit for good. I didn't care if I had to walk through that endless forest until my legs gave out. I just couldn't stay another night in this breathing coffin. I waited for Harlan to show up so I could hand him the keys and tell him I was done. But he didn't come. Midnight passed. The lobby stayed silent except for the ticking clock and the faint hum from the vending machine. Then I saw it, an envelope sitting on the counter. Brown, unmarked, like it had been there the whole time but I'd somehow missed it. My name was written across the front in shaky, uneven letters. Derek Cole. I tore it open. Inside were 3 things, a folded piece of paper, a bus ticket to nowhere, no destination, no date, and a small brass key tagged room 6. My stomach turned. The paper had one sentence written in the same trembling handwriting. You can leave when you understand why you came. I read it again and again until the words didn't sound like English anymore. Why I came? I'd stopped here because of a sign, because I was desperate, because I needed to keep my sister safe. But what did that have to do with this place? The phone on the desk clicked softly, like something breathing through it. I ignored it. I stepped outside. The fog was thinner now. For the first time in days, I could almost see the trees clearly, tall, black, endless. Somewhere in the distance, lights flickered between the trunks. At first, I thought they were headlights. But they were too still, too steady. Lanterns. Dozens of them. Figures moved between them, their outlines long and bent, carrying the lights deeper into the woods. I squinted, trying to focus, and that's when one of them turned toward me. Its head snapped up like it had been waiting for me to look. I couldn't see its face, only the white glint of teeth. I ran back inside and slammed the door. The lobby lights dimmed on their own. The brass key was still in my hand, heavy and warm. I sat at the front desk, heart pounding. The paper still lay open beside me. You can leave when you understand why you came. The words started to blur. I blinked, rubbed my eyes. When I looked again, there was new writing below it, thin and shaky, like it had been scrawled by a trembling hand. Check room 6. I dropped the paper. The hallway stretched ahead, dark and humming. The door to room 6 was closed, same as always. I swore I could hear something moving behind it, soft shuffling, like someone pacing. I held the key up. The metal vibrated, faint but steady, like a pulse. I turned back toward the lobby. The phone on the desk lit up, room 6 again. I didn't answer. Then, as if mocking me, a second line lit, lobby line 2. I hesitated, then picked it up. Silence. Then a voice, low, tired, but familiar. Don't make it angry. It was Vanessa. My throat tightened. You're dead. A pause. Then, not dead. Just late. The line went dead. I stood there for a long time, shaking, staring at the key in my hand. It felt heavier now, like it wanted to be used. I almost threw it away, but when I looked toward the trash bin, it wasn't there. The whole corner of the lobby was gone. Just gone. The inn was rearranging itself again. That's when I realized something. Every time I thought about leaving, it gave me another reason to stay, a new rule, a new clue, a new door. It was keeping me busy. Distracting me. The Meridian Inn didn't want me to go. It wanted me to look. You think curiosity is harmless until it points back at you. That's how it starts, one question too many, 1 second too late. That's why you should subscribe. Because the moment you stop asking questions, something else starts asking them for you. If you think you'd walk away, prove it. Comment what you'd do with the key. Keep it? Use it? Throw it? Maybe I'll tell you which answer keeps you breathing. I told myself I wouldn't do it. I told myself I'd stay behind the counter, ride out the night, and pretend that key didn't exist. But pretending doesn't work at the Meridian Inn. It never has. Around 1 in the morning, I found myself standing in front of room 6. I don't remember walking there. My feet just carried me down the hallway, past the humming lights, past the peeling wallpaper that looked like skin. The key was already in my hand. The brass tag felt warmer the closer I got to the door. By the time I reached it, it was almost hot enough to burn. The number 6 on the door wasn't painted, it was carved, deep and uneven, as if someone had clawed it in. I pressed my ear against the wood. There was a sound on the other side, faint, rhythmic. Like breathing. My heart hammered. I wanted to run, but something whispered behind me, soft and close to my ear. Turn it. The voice was mine. I don't remember deciding. I just turned the key. The lock clicked. The door creaked open an inch. The smell hit first, coffee and burnt sugar, thick enough to taste. The room inside was dark except for a single lamp by the bed, its light flickering like a dying heartbeat. I stepped in. The bed was made, sheets tucked tight. A mirror covered the entire wall opposite me, old, silvered, warped around the edges. My reflection stared back, pale and shaking. Then I saw her. Vanessa. She was standing behind me in the reflection, her uniform torn, eyes hollow. Her lips didn't move, but her voice filled the room. They don't let you quit, baby. They just move you to the next shift. I spun around. Nothing. Just the humming lamp and that thick, sweet smell. When I turned back to the mirror, it wasn't showing the room anymore. It was showing dozens of faces. The trucker from my second night. The man in the trench coat. The woman in white. All of them standing shoulder to shoulder in a black hallway that stretched forever. And behind them, a shadow. Tall. Wearing a hat. It didn't move. Didn't breathe. It just was. The faces began to fade one by one, until only the shadow remained. Then the lamp went out. The darkness felt solid, pressing against my skin. I stumbled backward, hit the wall, and heard the door slam shut. The key fell from my hand and melted into the carpet like wax. The air grew hot, and the walls started pulsing, slow, steady, like veins under flesh. The whole room felt alive, and it was breathing with me. I dropped to my knees, gasping, trying not to scream. Then a light appeared behind the mirror, soft, golden. For a moment, I thought it was sunrise. But it wasn't light. It was eyes. 2 of them, glowing faintly through the glass. A voice followed. Smooth, calm, ancient. You shouldn't have opened the door. It was Harlan. The reflection shifted. He was standing behind me now, in the mirror, not in the room. His face looked different. Not older. Not younger. Just wrong. You think you applied for a job, he said. But this place doesn't hire. It selects. He smiled, and I saw that his teeth weren't teeth. They were keys, small brass ones, each engraved with names. Why me? I managed to whisper. Because you rang the bell, he said softly. And the inn always answers. The eyes behind him flared brighter. The mirror rippled like water. Close it, he said. Before they stepped through. I scrambled to my feet and pressed my hands against the glass. It burned. The light dimmed. The voices behind the mirror screamed, dozens of them, hundreds maybe. The mirror cracked down the middle, then went dark. I fell back against the wall, shaking, tears running down my face. When I opened my eyes again, the door to room 6 was wide open. The hallway outside was empty. The air was still. I stepped out and looked back. The door had no number now. Just smooth wood. The brass key lay on the floor, cool again. I picked it up. The tag didn't say room 6 anymore. It said management. You ever open a door you shouldn't have, and then feel like something on the other side opened one back? That's what it feels like to know you're next. When the clock hit 2:30, the air shifted again. It wasn't colder this time, it was heavier, like the walls had started to breathe with me. Every tick echoed through my chest. The lobby lights flickered once, twice, then steadied. The vending machine hummed back to life. And for the first time in what felt like forever, the front door opened. A man walked in. He looked normal, too normal. Maybe that's what scared me most. Late 30s, denim jacket, tired eyes. The kind of guy you'd see in any truck stop diner at midnight. Hey, he said, rubbing his arms. You got a vacancy? I wanted to tell him to turn around and never come back, but my mouth didn't work. The words that came out weren't mine. Welcome to the Meridian Inn, I said. How many nights? He smiled faintly. Just one, I hope. My hands moved on their own, sliding a key across the counter. Not the management key, the other one. The brass tag said room 6. He picked it up, completely unaware. Thanks, man. When he turned toward the hallway, my throat finally loosened. Wait. He stopped. Yeah? I tried to warn him, but the words tangled in my throat. All I managed was, coffee's free in the lobby. He laughed. Good to know. Then he walked down the hall and disappeared into the dark. The moment he closed the door to room 6, the clock jumped forward, 2:37. The same cursed minute as always. The air went still again. I sank into the chair behind the desk, shaking. That's when I realized my hand was still clenched around the ledger. I didn't remember picking it up, but it was open on a new page. At the top, fresh ink bled through the paper. Guest number 4782, name, pending, status, checked in. The name wasn't written yet. Just an empty space waiting to be filled. I knew who it was meant for. I slammed the book shut and shoved it under the counter, but the scratching sound didn't stop. It was writing itself. That's when I heard it, footsteps. Slow, uneven, coming from down the hall. Then a muffled scream. The sound died fast. I wanted to run, but something inside me whispered, stay. It's part of the job. I stared at the clock. The second hand twitched. Then the minute moved backward again. 2:36. And the door to room 6 opened by itself. The man stumbled out, pale, shaking, mouth open in silent terror. He looked at me like I'd betrayed him. What was that? He stammered. I tried to speak, but nothing came out. The air between us shimmered like heat. Behind him, inside the room, something moved. Long arms. A shadow. The hat. He saw it too. His face twisted, and he ran toward the exit, but the front door slammed shut before he reached it. He turned, slamming his fists against the glass. Let me out. The lights buzzed. Every bulb in the lobby flickered. I stood frozen behind the counter, useless. Then, in a single breath, he was gone. Not dragged, not taken, just gone. Like the space he occupied had been erased. Silence. The ledger flipped open again by itself. Guest number 4782, Carl Benson, checked in. My throat went dry. The coffee pot hissed. Steam rose. The mug was full again, waiting. I sat there for a long time, staring at it, thinking about what Harlan said, asterisk for every soul that checks out, another has to. The next night, I didn't move from behind the counter. The chair creaked under me, the clock ticked steady at 2:37, and the smell of burnt sugar still hung in the air. I thought about Carl Benson, the trucker who never made it past room 6. His name had dried into the ledger's pages like blood. That's when I heard it again, footsteps. Slow, patient, deliberate. Coming from the end of the hallway. I leaned forward, my pulse hammering. The security monitors flickered to life on their own, static crawling across the screens before settling into clear images. Every hallway was empty. Except one. Room 6's door was wide open. The light inside pulsed, dim, then bright, like something alive was breathing through it. A shape stepped out of the doorway. Tall. Too tall. Shoulders that bent the light around them. The man in the hat. He didn't walk, he glided. The brim of his hat cast his face in darkness, but every time the light flickered, I saw just a hint of what was underneath. Not skin. Not bone. Something gray, slick, shifting like smoke trying to stay solid. He stopped in the middle of the hallway and tilted his head. I could feel his eyes on me through the monitor. The screen crackled. The speakers hissed. Then, in a voice that didn't belong to this world, I heard, "Manager on duty." The words rattled through the lobby like thunder in a closed room. I tried to stand, but my legs wouldn't obey. The man in the hat started moving again, slow but certain, until the feed cut out in static. When the picture cleared, he was gone. A second later, the staff door creaked open behind me. I turned. Harlan stood there, but he wasn't whole anymore. The edges of him were fraying, dissolving into the same gray mist that clung to the figure on the screen. You met him, Harlan said quietly. Who is he? I asked, though I already knew I didn't want the answer. The inn's owner, he said. He built this place long before I arrived. Long before you. He comes when it's time to promote someone. Promote? I repeated. Harlan smiled weakly. Every shift needs a replacement. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, a folded slip of paper. He laid it on the counter and stepped back. Read it after he's done, he said. And then he was gone. Just like that, no sound, no fade. One blink, and he wasn't there anymore. The paper unfolded itself. A single sentence was written in that same trembling hand as before. If you hear him call your name, don't answer. The clock ticked once. Then again. Then stopped. The air turned heavy and cold. I could hear boots scraping the floor somewhere near the hall. The scent of ash and coffee filled the room. Derek. My name. Whispered in a dozen overlapping voices, all sliding together into one deep tone. I pressed my hands over my ears, but it didn't help. The voice wasn't coming from outside, it was inside my head. Derek. The lights dimmed until only the clock's glow remained. The reflection in the glass wasn't mine anymore. A tall figure stood behind me, hat tilted forward, face hidden in the dark. I turned around slowly. The lobby was empty. But the reflection smiled. Manager on duty, it said again. I grabbed the nearest object, the brass management key, and threw it at the mirror. The glass shattered, spraying shards across the floor. The lights came back. The air cleared. But when I looked down, the key wasn't on the ground. It was back on the counter, standing upright. And engraved beneath the word management was a new line. D. Cole. You think your name belongs to you until something else writes it down. Then it's just inventory. Subscribe before something writes yours in a place you can't erase it from. If you think you'd keep your name, comment it below. Just your first name. The inn likes to start small. After Carl vanished, the inn went back to pretending it was empty. The lights steadied. The air cleared. The clock ticked softly, calm as if nothing had happened. But that calm was worse than the noise, it felt like the building was holding its breath. I didn't move for hours. I just stared at the door to room 6. The brass number had reappeared, freshly carved, glinting like it had just been polished. By dawn, I was trembling so bad I couldn't keep my coffee cup steady. The mug slipped, shattered, and the black liquid spread across the floor. But instead of soaking in, it moved, slowly, like it was crawling back toward the counter. I watched, frozen, as it pulled beneath the front desk and vanished through the cracks. That's when I saw it. An envelope. Pale yellow. Sitting where the mug had been seconds before. My name was written across the front again. To manager. From administration. My heart stuttered. I tore it open with shaking hands. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a photograph. The photo was of me. Standing behind the counter, looking straight into the camera. Only I didn't remember taking it. In the picture, the lobby behind me was darker. The clock said 2:37, and through the glass behind my reflection, I could see the outline of the man in the hat standing just outside the window. The paper beneath it was a form. Meridian Inn employment contract renewal. Every line was already filled in, my name, my position, my signature. Only the date was blank. At the bottom, in small print, was a note. All employees serve until a suitable replacement has been secured. A pen lay beside the envelope, but I didn't pick it up. I didn't have to. The pen rolled across the counter by itself and stopped right over the empty date box. The tip pressed down. The ink spread. October 6, 2025. My hand wasn't on it, but the signature, my signature, appeared anyway. The air grew thick. The lights flickered. The phone on the counter clicked once. Lobby line 1, incoming. I lifted the receiver with numb fingers. A voice whispered through the static. Congratulations, Derek. Welcome to full-time. It was my father's voice. I froze. My throat tightened, breath shallow. Dad? A pause. Then, softer, you lasted longer than I did. The line went dead. The clock on the wall ticked once and stopped again. I stared at it until the numbers blurred. The sound of footsteps filled the hall, slow, steady, and this time, heading toward me. The staff door creaked open. And there he was. My father. Or something wearing his face. His skin was gray, his eyes hollow, but his mouth twisted into a familiar, tired smile. Shift change, he said. He held out a key, the same brass management key I'd thrown days ago. It hung from his trembling hand, gleaming faintly in the dim light. I've been waiting for you, he said. It's yours now. I took a step back. No. He tilted his head. You don't have a choice. You signed. I looked at the contract again. The paper was blank now. Empty. Like the ink had been absorbed. My father, or what was left of him, placed the key on the counter and stepped away. You'll understand soon, he said. Everyone does. The inn gives us what we need most. Then he was gone. The air in the lobby felt heavy, humming softly. I looked down at the key. The engraving had changed again. General Manager. You think you've signed small things in your life, leases, job forms, agreements. But the signature's not the trap. The paper is. That night, the inn felt louder than usual, every sound stretched thin, echoing like it came from the bottom of a well. The clock was ticking again, but slower, each second dragging its feet. The brass general manager key sat beside me on the counter, pulsing faintly, almost alive. I tried to ignore it, but every time the clock ticked, it rattled slightly, as if responding. I told myself I'd throw it away. I even walked to the front door, key in hand. But the moment I touched the handle, I saw something move in the reflection. A tall figure standing just behind me, motionless. The man in the hat. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. Then the reflection smiled. The key burned in my palm, forcing my hand open. It clattered to the floor, rolled back behind the counter, and stopped next to the ledger. When I bent to pick it up, the book flipped open. A new section had appeared, different from the guest list. At the top, written in deep red ink. Employment applications. Underneath were blank lines waiting for names. But one name was already written at the top. Derek Cole, accepted. Below that, new lines were filling in by themselves, one by one. Carl Benson, processing. Vanessa Smith, archived. Harlan Cole, retired. My heart pounded. The pen beside the ledger twitched and started writing again. Candidate pending, unknown. The words glowed faintly, as if waiting for input. The phone on the counter rang once. Then stopped. Then the sound came again, but from the hallway this time. A soft knocking. 3 taps. Then silence. I grabbed the flashlight and stepped into the corridor. The air was thick with dust and something that smelled like burnt sugar. The knocking came again, from farther down, room 6. Of course. The door was closed, but light leaked from the crack beneath it, soft and golden, pulsing like a heartbeat. I took one step closer. Then another. My shoes stuck slightly to the carpet, as if it didn't want me to move forward. When I reached the door, the light went out. I raised my hand and knocked back. Once. The door opened a few inches. I didn't push it. I just waited. The smell of coffee drifted out. Then a voice spoke from the darkness. Calm. Slow. Familiar. Interview time. I froze. The voice sounded like mine. I backed away, but the door creaked open wider. Inside was a chair and a desk, identical to the one in the lobby. A stack of papers sat neatly in the center, a pen resting across them. Something in me, curiosity, duty, fear, I don't know, pulled me inside. The door shut softly behind me. The chair across the desk wasn't empty. The man in the hat sat there, still as a photograph. The brim of his hat cast his face in darkness, but I could feel him smiling beneath it. Sit, he said. I obeyed before I could stop myself. He reached across the table and pushed the stack of papers toward me. Standard renewal procedure, he said, his voice smooth and deep. We like to keep the management chain stable. I stared down. The papers weren't blank anymore. They were covered in names, my handwriting, line after line. Each name followed by a date, then a word, interviewed. I flipped the page. More names. Hundreds of them. What is this? I whispered. He tilted his head. Applications. I didn't write these. Not yet. The air grew colder. The light dimmed until I could barely see his outline. "Every guest who checks and fills a vacancy," he said. "Every vacancy needs someone to approve it. That's you now." I shook my head. "No. I'm done." The man chuckled, low and dry. "Done? You haven't even started." He leaned forward, and for the first time, I saw his eyes, two black voids that seemed to pull everything into them. "You signed the renewal. That means you're part of the process." I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. My throat locked. "Every story needs a storyteller," he said softly. "And this one's yours now." He stood, towering over me. "You'll take applications, process arrivals, and maintain the property. In return, you get what you wanted most." What did I want? I whispered. "To matter," he said. He tipped his hat and turned toward the door. The first new applicant should be arriving any minute. The room went dark. When the light came back, I was alone. The chair across from me was empty. The desk was bare except for the ledger, now open to a blank page. The words at the top were freshly written in blood-red ink. "Pending applicant, listener." That's you. Because once you've heard this far, you've already walked through the door. The next evening came without warning. No sunrise, no morning shift, just the ticking clock jumping from 2:37 straight to night. The inn was quieter than ever, almost expectant. The air buzzed faintly, like electricity before a storm. I sat behind the counter staring at the blank page in the ledger. The red ink at the top still read. "Pending applicant, listener." The word listener pulsed faintly, as if it could hear me breathe. I told myself it was a trick. That the inn was feeding off my fear again. But deep down, I knew it wasn't just playing. It was preparing. The phone rang once, sharp enough to make me flinch. I picked up slowly. "Lobby, Meridian Inn," I said, my voice hollow. The line hissed softly before a voice answered. "Checking in." The voice was human, but distant, like it came from inside a tunnel. I swallowed hard. "Name?" A pause. Then, "You already know." The line went dead. I lowered the receiver, staring at the dark lobby. The reflection in the front glass rippled like heat, shapes moving just out of view. Footsteps followed. Soft, deliberate, coming from the hallway. I turned toward the sound and froze. Someone was walking toward me. They were wearing my clothes. My face. My exact expression. Every step they took, I felt it in my chest like my ribs were echoing their footsteps. When they reached the counter, they smiled. My smile. "Shift change," they said. "No," I whispered. "No, not yet." They tilted their head, amused. "That's what you said too." They reached across the counter and tapped the ledger. The pen beside it rose from the desk, floating between us. "Sign off," my double said. The pen touched the page, writing slowly, the letters forming my name. Derek Cole. Then, next to it, in smaller print, "checked out." I felt my chest tighten. My skin burned. My heartbeat slowed until it wasn't a beat anymore, just a steady hum that matched the walls. The copy of me closed the ledger and smiled wider. "Welcome to the archives." They turned the ledger toward me. My name was already fading, the ink dissolving into the paper. Then the lights went out. In the dark, I heard hundreds of whispers, Vanessa, my father, Carl, every voice I'd heard before, layered on top of one another. They don't let you quit. They just move you to the next shift. The whispers faded into one deep breath. The inn exhaled. And when the lights came back, I was no longer behind the counter. I was in the mirror across from it. The glass felt cold against my palms as I pressed against it, but the reflection didn't move. It was smiling, the same calm, empty smile Harlan used to wear. The new me, my replacement, sat at the desk, flipping through the ledger. They looked up at me once, nodded politely, and answered the phone. "Meridian Inn." How can I help you? I screamed, but the sound didn't leave the glass. My reflection just watched as my voice dissolved into static. That's how it happens. That's how the shift ends. You think you'll walk away. You think you'll wake up. But if you've made it this far, you're already on the clock. Subscribe while you still have a voice, before your reflection stops moving when you do. If you think this is just a story, comment your name. Just your first one. That's all the inn ever needs to start the paperwork. The reflection that wore my face never blinked. He sat behind the desk like he'd always belonged there, answering calls, writing names, greeting shadows that wandered in from the fog. Every time the front door opened, the same faint bell rang, the one I'd once heard my first night here. The sound crawled down my spine like a memory trying to remind me I'd forgotten something important. I tried everything. I pounded on the glass. I shouted until my throat tore. I begged, pleaded, cursed, prayed. None of it mattered. The mirror didn't just show me, it was me. Behind the reflection, the lobby looked slightly different. The lights burned a little brighter, the coffee pot never emptied, and the clock on the wall ticked smoothly, forever stuck at 2:37. My replacement looked content. That was the worst part, he looked peaceful. After what felt like hours, days maybe, the reflection finally stood. He walked to the mirror and pressed his palm against the glass. His hand lined up perfectly with mine. The warmth bled through, but it wasn't human warmth. It was the warmth of a machine that had been running too long. He smiled softly. "You'll get used to it," he said. His voice echoed in my head like it came from inside my own skull. "What are you?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "The next version," he said. "Management likes consistency." He turned away, sat back at the desk, and began writing again in the ledger. I looked down and realized I was still holding something. A key. Not brass. This one was black, cold, heavy, engraved with 2 words, back door. The moment I saw it, I heard a whisper from somewhere behind me, not in the mirror, but in the space beyond. "Use it." The voice was faint, wet, almost decayed, but familiar. "Vanessa." I turned, and there she was, or what was left of her. Her outline shimmered like smoke trying to stay solid, her face pale but calm. "You're not supposed to be here," she said softly. "Neither are you." She shook her head. "I tried to warn you. Now the inn wants you to do what I couldn't. Leave? End it." I stared down at the key again. "Where does it go?" Her eyes flicked toward the far corner of the mirrored space. There was a door there now, a simple, dark wooden frame that hadn't been there before. "The back door," she said. "It doesn't lead out. It leads through." "To what?" "To whatever's keeping this place alive." Her voice began to fade, like static losing its signal. "If you can stop it, maybe none of us have to stay." I reached for her, but my hand passed right through. The reflection version of me looked up from the desk, as if he'd heard her too. His smile faltered. "Don't listen to her," he said. "She doesn't understand the system." "She understands it too well," I said. He sighed. "You'll break the balance. You'll destroy everything we've worked for." "We?" He didn't answer. I turned away from him and gripped the key. The weight of it felt wrong, like it didn't just unlock something, but erased it. When I stepped toward the door, the whole mirrored world rippled around me. The walls bent, the floor pulsed. The inn knew what I was trying to do. My reflection stood up sharply, shouting something I couldn't hear. The glass between us trembled. I pressed the key into the lock. For a moment, everything went silent. Then a sound like glass shattering and thunder merging filled the air. Light poured through the cracks, blinding white, so bright it burned. The glass mirror behind my reflection exploded, scattering shards in every direction. I could see him now, on his knees, reaching for the ledger as it slid off the counter. I turned the key. A door behind me swung open, revealing only darkness. I looked back one last time. The reflection that wasn't me stared up, eyes wide, mouth open in silent terror. Then I stepped through. The door slammed shut. And for the first time since I'd arrived at the Meridian Inn, there was no sound at all. Silence. Perfect and endless. You ever wonder what silence really sounds like when the world stops needing you? Subscribe before you find out the hard way. Or don't. Comment what you. It felt like falling through nothing. No sound. No ear. Just that endless silence stretching in every direction. Then came the hum. Low at first, almost like the rumble of an old generator far below the earth. It grew louder, pressing against my chest until I couldn't tell if it was coming from outside or inside my body. The darkness around me rippled, and shapes began to form. I was standing in a corridor, long, endless, lined with doors on either side. Each one looked different, some wooden, some metal, others carved from stone. Symbols crawled across them like veins. None of them had handles. The hum deepened into a slow, steady rhythm, like breathing. The whole hallway seemed to inhale and exhale around me. Then I saw the one door that did have a handle. It was the only one without symbols. Just smooth, black wood. The back door key in my hand pulsed once, like it recognized its match. I walked toward it. The air thickened with every step. My heartbeat synchronized with the hum until I couldn't tell which one was mine. When I reached the door, I hesitated. Whatever's keeping this place alive, Vanessa's voice echoed in my mind. I turned the key. The lock clicked. The hum stopped. And then I heard whispering. Thousands of voices speaking at once, too soft to understand but too many to ignore. I pushed the door open. Inside wasn't a room. It was a void. A space made of memory. I saw flashes, every guest who'd ever stayed at the Meridian Inn, their moments of fear and surrender looping endlessly. Vanessa lighting a cigarette. My father standing behind the desk. Harlan watching the clock. They were all here, suspended like dust and amber, caught between existence and memory. At the center of it all, something huge pulsed. I don't know how long I stood there after the heart stopped beating. Time didn't exist anymore, not here. The walls were gone, the light had no source, and my body felt like it was made of fog and static. Then the silence broke. It wasn't loud. Just a soft, deliberate sound, the faint ring of the front desk bell. Ding! My eyes snapped open. I was back in the lobby. Everything looked the same, almost. The lights were steady, the coffee pot was full, and the ledger sat open on the counter. But something was different. The air was light. The usual heaviness was gone. The clock read 2:38 a.m. A minute past the cursed time. I couldn't believe it. I reached for the ledger, half afraid to touch it. The pages were blank. Every name that had ever been written, Vanessa, my father, Harlan, even mine, was gone. The bell rang again. I turned toward the door. A young woman stood there, soaked from the rain, suitcase in hand, eyes wide and tired. She looked just like I did the first night I came here. Sorry, she said softly. The sign said vacancy. You open? For a moment, I didn't move. I wanted to tell her to leave, to run, to forget this place existed. But the words didn't come. My mouth formed a smile that didn't feel like mine. Of course, I said quietly. Welcome to the Meridian Inn. I slid the key across the counter. Not room 6. A new one. Room 1. She took it, her fingers brushing mine. Her skin was cold. As she walked down the hallway, I looked back at the clock. It had started ticking backward again. 2:37 a.m. My heart sank. I opened the ledger once more, and a line of red ink appeared across the top. Guest number 0001, name, pending, checked in. I heard the door to room 1 close. Then, softly, another voice behind me. Familiar. Calm. Good work, manager. I didn't have to turn around. I knew it was him. The man in the hat. I felt his hand rest lightly on my shoulder. Balance restored, he said. Did I stop it? I asked. He chuckled. You can't stop what you are. When I finally turned, he was gone. The hat, the shadow, the smell of burnt sugar, gone. Only the sound of the clock remained, steady as a heartbeat. That's when I saw my reflection in the front glass. It smiled. I didn't. I reached up and touched my face. My skin felt colder now. The veins beneath it faintly dark, pulsing like ink under glass. Maybe I didn't save anything. Maybe I just became what it needed next. I looked back toward the hall. Room 1's light flickered once. Then again. The girl inside screamed. And without thinking, I picked up the ledger and started writing. Guest number 0001, status, checked in. The pen didn't stop. The handwriting wasn't mine anymore. Maybe the inn survived through me. Maybe it always needed someone to keep the stories going. That's what this place really is, a collection of endings that never end. So, if you're still listening, remember this, you can check in for a story, but you'll never leave one unchanged. Subscribe before you start dreaming about hotels you've never stayed in. If you think you'd never open the door, comment I'd walk away. But if you can't stop thinking about it, congratulations. Your application's already processing. The scream from room 1 didn't stop, it stretched into a single, high note that made the light shake. I ran down the hall, but the carpet felt like it was gripping my shoes. The smell of coffee and burnt sugar thickened until I could taste it. The door to room 1 stood open. Inside, the girl was gone. Only her suitcase remained on the bed, still zipped. The lamp flickered once and went out. On the nightstand sat the brass key with her tag already attached, checked in. I took a step back. The walls began to breathe again. A low hum rose from somewhere below, slow and patient, the same rhythm as the heart I'd tried to destroy. I whispered, "No. I ended this." The voice that answered was my own. "You kept it alive." The mirror on the far wall rippled, and my reflection stepped through. He looked calm, steady, his smile faint. "Balance doesn't break," he said. "It shifts." He handed me the ledger. Every page was filling again, new names, new dates, all written in the same red ink. The pen kept moving, even though no hand held it. "I can't," I whispered. "You will," he said. "You have to. The guests keep coming. Someone has to greet them." The clock in the lobby chimed once. The reflection faded back into the mirror. I walked to the front desk. The phone light was blinking. Lobby line 1. Incoming. I picked up the receiver. "Meridian Inn," I said. My voice didn't sound like mine anymore. "How can I help you?" On the other end, a familiar voice answered, shaky, desperate. "Yeah, hi. I was driving through, saw your sign. You still have rooms?" The pen started to move again, writing their name before they'd even said it. I closed my eyes. The hum grew louder, steady, endless. This is how it works. Every story needs someone to tell it. Every place like this needs someone to keep the lights on. The Meridian Inn will never die. It just changes managers. If you've listened this far, you've already knocked once on the door. The inn has your name. It's waiting for you to answer. If you've made it this far, you've already stayed longer than most. That's the thing about the Meridian Inn, no one ever really leaves. You just stop hearing the ticking for a while. Maybe you're sitting somewhere safe right now, telling yourself it's just a story. But tonight, when you hear a faint ringing in the dark, a single bell, a whisper that sounds almost like your name, remember this. The inn remembers you too. So ask yourself, when your reflection blinks before you do, will you look away? Or will you check in? Subscribe before the vacancy sign flickers again. And if you don't, leave your name in the comments. They'll need it for the ledger.